Welcome to another insightful episode of Me and My Health Up with your host, Anthony Harcher, a healthy man, according to my kids, aka clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. The purpose of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten your well-being. And today we'll be chatting with Gary Jubelin on work-life harmony with a particular focus on mental health. Gary Jubelin is known as a legendary homicide detective and has been accredited with solving some of the nation's most horrific crimes. My mum says he is a hero because of his dedication to keeping Australia safe, and I thoroughly agree. He retired in 2019 with the rank of the Detective Chief Inspector after a 34-year career with the New South Wales Police Force. During a career, he earned himself high recommendations for policing. He performed duties from covering generalist detective duties to solving major crimes. These include experiences in armed hold-up squad, organised crime squad, gang squad, unsolved homicide and homicide squad. He specialised in the field of homicide investigation for up to 25 years until his retirement. As a homicide detective, Gary led some of the largest, most complex, high-profile investigations in New South Wales. These included gangland killings, serial murders, sexually motivated murders, domestic murders, child killers, revenge murders, murders who tortured their victims, random murders, police shootings, abductions, and serial rapists. Gary has written an autobiography and hosts a podcast called I Catch Criminals. Outside of his work, Gary enjoys martial arts, qigong, meditation, surfing, yoga, boxing, and riding motorbikes. Welcome, Gary. How are you today?
Good, Anthony. Good, Anthony. So, thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, you're welcome. It's an absolute delight to have you on your show, and I'm looking forward to you sharing all your wisdom around physical and mental health with our listeners. But yeah, before we commence, there's a general question I always ask my guests, and it's around just sharing your story as to what's inspired you, shaped you to be the incredible person you are today.
Well, I'll just clarify. I'm not sure how incredible I am. I try hard. That might be a better way of describing me. But life's funny, isn't it? Because it takes different paths. And I grew up, and I never envisaged that I'd be a police officer. It wasn't something that really crossed the radar. And I was more into, as a young bloke growing up playing sport. Surfing was a passion of mine in the early years, and just having a good time. But that changed in my early 20s. I was in the building trade, and I enjoyed the building trade. It was hard work, and anyone that sort of whinges about policing, I invite them to spend a couple of days straight on a jackhammer and see whether policing's that bad. But in the early 20s, I joined policing. I've talked about this before, and it wasn't any noble reason I joined. I was actually on a building site having lunch, and I saw some cops chasing a bad guy down the street, and a full-on sprint. And I thought that looked like fun, and I applied the next day. When I got into policing, I just found it fitted me like a glove. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the interaction that you had with people. I enjoyed the challenges and the excitement. So that's sort of taken me on a path, and then I won't say fell into homicide. It's what I wanted to do, but my career there, and police certainly shaped me as the person that I am today. Whether that's for the better or worse, I'm not sure. But I think, I say this to my children, and I say it to anyone, that if you can find something you're passionate about and make a career of it, you've got half the life ticked off as you're pointed in the right direction. And that's what I found with policing, that was something that I enjoyed, something that and others might debate this, but I had a skill set that suited that profession, and I enjoyed myself.
Yeah, no, you certainly could tell that you really enjoyed and was very passionate about your field of work, because the amount of dedication you put into it shows that passion and how much you cared for what you're doing, the job at hand, and protecting the citizens of Australia. So, really hats off to you for that dedication you've served and given. And I've got so much respect for what you've done. So I also relate to that passion you shared, because it's something that I discovered later on in life. So I was working in a corporate career and was feeling unfulfilled, and it was at that point I thought, no, I don't want to continue, working when you spend so much of your life doing work, doing something that I don't enjoy. And so I went with my passion, which was health and wellness and helping others. So, yeah, I totally can relate.
If you get up and you're looking forward to going to work, it's a good way to start the day, isn't it? And I genuinely feel for people that are trapped, or when I say trapped, everyone's got a choice, but caught up in jobs or careers that they're not finding fulfilling. And I was at the point, I didn't know whether I was working or not working. I was just working 24/7, but it worked for me. And I enjoyed it.
Really, I'm personally intrigued, and I'm sure the listeners are, as to what it's like working as a detective. You just mentioned that word 24/7,
Yeah.
and I perceive it would be like that. Given that such a horrific crimes happened, and everyone's uneasy about this criminal still being at large, and you have the whole responsibility of all the citizens to get this criminal behind bars as quick as possible. And so I'm really keen for you to share, like, what is a particular day or some moments that really stood out the most for you throughout your career?
There's one particular job and it spanned sort of 10 years. It was the murder of Terry Falconer. It was an organised crime job that I was working on that for a long time. Obviously, it was 10 years before we took out the bad guys with that. That particular investigation was all consuming at certain points, not for the whole 10 years, but at certain points when we were really, stirring up organised crime, and there were people killed whilst we were targeting these people. So it was, the pressure was on. We had to bring some resolution to it. So when I say 24/7, it was nothing for the phone to ring at 2 o'clock in the morning and have to deal with a situation or make a decision. And some of them, without exaggerating it, were life-threatening decisions, and you had to make the decision that in the middle of the night or whenever you were confronted with that problem. So if I tried to pigeonhole that I'm at work and now I'm at home, it just wouldn't work. So I had to change my thinking in that, okay, this is what I do. I'm a homicide detective. I live and breathe the job. I owe that to the victims and the victims' families to work that way. People might say that, but that's an obsessive trait or whatever. If you enjoyed the work that you do and you believe in the work that you do, I wasn't confronted by it. Like, I could be working on the weekend, and even though on the roster I'm off, but I might be checking through the brief or doing things. But that's what you had to do. And the thing about homicide investigation, I say this to a lot of people within the police when I was in the police, and I say it now, that if you're not prepared to bleed for the job, but maybe that's not the right area, because homicide investigation is not 9 to 5. And if you think it's going to be 9 to 5 and you're not going to have to make sacrifices, you're mistaken. And if you don't make any sacrifices, you're not doing justice for the victims' families.
Yeah, it's and I think what you've really touched on a key point here is, with technology, it's really brought about work is coming in beyond that 9 to 5 into people's lives, and they have to manage their own boundaries and find some sort of point. As you said, it's immersed into it morphs into one area in a sense. And but you got to be able to dance or go with this flow and find some harmony amongst that work-life balance.
Yeah. I think that's right. You can't fight it. Like, if I was sitting at home going, "Damn it, it's my day off. Why am I dealing with this?" That wouldn't have been beneficial to me. It would have made me angry, and it would have caused problems. I had I think a good bounce back in that I could be down and out and feel like I just can't take this anymore. But I could within 24 hours be fresh and ready to go. And so I had that resilience, that bounce back, and I don't know what contributed to that, but for me, I had that. So no matter how beaten down the job became for me, I could bounce back, and it might just be half an hour to check myself, go for a run, or do something, but I could bounce back.
And that's a key point you've touched on, which I really like to explore a bit further, is you've always prioritized your health regardless of what's going on. Your 24/7 job that was,
Yeah,
always pressuring you. And as you said, you're totally human. You have these down days where things aren't going well, but you're able to pick yourself up. And you mentioned this inbuilt resilience.
yeah,
It's something that I think without realizing, probably consciously,
yeah,
that you've created for yourself, which I'm really keen for you to share with the listeners.
yeah.
What's your view on health, and how do you make it a priority in terms of all these other commitments you have? Because I'm sure this will be really useful for the listeners to hear as to how they can make health a priority, and particularly with us returning, back to this sort of more normality, with the vaccine rolled out. People are going back to this sort of faster paced life, this rat race, and health seems to be dropping off again. So I'm really keen for you to give us some inspiration as to your views on health and how it serves you to be the best you can be at your whatever you're doing.
Okay. Well, when I was a young bloke, I didn't really concentrate on physical training because you were always running around. I was surfing, or I was playing soccer, or I was doing whatever. So you didn't really have to make a conscious decision to maintain your health. Oh, I wish to be that way now. You'd get an injury, you'd sprain your ankle, it'd swell up overnight, and by the morning you're up and running on it again. But that was the beauty of youth. When I joined the police, down the academy in the days when I joined in '85, it was, they went hard at you physically, and I loved it. I'm thinking, what, you get paid for this? Like we're running upstairs and someone's throwing up and they're making the person do push-ups over where they've just thrown up. Yeah, in this day and age, it wouldn't be allowed, obviously. But that sort of got my interest in fitness. And then when I joined the police, you're on a lot of shift work. So I was in uniform, you'd be working 7 nights straight. So your circle of friends change, not your circle of friends, your access to your friends. So I had a lot of time during the day, during the middle of the day, and I trained each day, and I got into a habit of training, and I've maintained that all the way through. No matter what you throw at me during the day, if I've got a training session in the morning, I think I'm ready for it. Where I get pissed off is when I haven't trained in the morning. I've made some excuse why I didn't train, and I get tied up with work. And then the end of the day, I feel like I've let myself down. So my training was my time. That was where I recharged, and I felt good about myself. I felt that I had the energy, and certainly I looked for that when I was involved in homicide investigations, because sometimes you would work for days straight, and I think the longest I worked was something like 38 hours or maybe more, and you're awake constantly making big decisions. I noticed the people that kept themselves fit had that, they didn't break down, and I thought that was an important trait. I also trained at work. I made a point of training at work, and people would sort of look at me strange where I'd grab my gym gear and go to the gym at the police station or go to the police boys club. And I could always find someone that wanted to train. That was the beauty of police. Some bosses frowned on it, and some people said, no, you're at work, you should be training. And it's usually the people that you see go have 20 cups of coffee a day or a smoke, and they're the ones that find it offensive that you take half an hour to train. So I sort of ignored that and just trained. And in fact, some of the police stations I worked at or areas I worked at, people would wonder where I was, and they'd say, oh, he's in his happy place, and that was the gym. But doing that helped me. The type of training I did, I started out hard training. So I'm going to run further, I'm going to run faster, I'm going to lift heavier weights and all that. And I think it was sort of mid to late 20s, very, very fit, extremely fit, but not healthy. And by that, I meant I could walk past someone that had a sniffle and I'd catch a cold and be bedridden. So in my attitude, I just put on 3 or 4 tracksuits and go for a run while I've got the flu. And it would help me initially, but my immune system just went, it would cure that initial dose of the flu, but my immune system just suffered, and I couldn't understand it. Then I found martial arts, and through the martial arts, and it was the kickboxing and kung fu that I started off with initially. And I'd see people that could do things physically that I couldn't do, and that sort of I'm looking and thinking, oh, I lift heavy weights, I run this far, do this and do that, but you can just smash me. And that's where I found a SIFU was started, and some of the instructors said, well, maybe you've got to consider soft training. And I've sort of looking at it as most young blokes and women might look at it. I'm not going to waste my time sitting there, chanting or stretching or that. But I was convinced, and that led me down a path of the importance of stretching, which is, I still to this day, I talk of it. I'm not doing enough, and I know that injuries are a result of me not stretching. But also a thing called Qigong, and Qigong, not many people knew about it. So we're talking sort of 25 years or so ago, and it's like a moving form of meditation, not dissimilar to what people identify Tai Chi as. And what I found with that is that not only did I become fitter by balancing my training out, I also became healthier, and healthier that my immune system wasn't busted ass and catching colds every second week, and it really helped me. And another thing that I learned also, and this is you're experimenting on your own body basically, where I'd have a particularly intense period at work, so I'd flog myself, and this is when I was in my fitness stage before I'd learnt the benefits of soft training. I'd have a holiday or have a week off, and I think, yes, at last, no work, have a holiday off. Guarantee day one, I would come down with the flu. And I think it's just my body's way of being so tight, so intense, and then relaxing for the holiday, and I let myself go, and I'd catch the flu, and then I'd spend a week with the flu, and I'm talking man flu, like, it's a serious type flu. A week, pissed off, I've got a sore throat, I'm not feeling good, I'm not enjoying my holiday, and then I'd come back to work, and that cycle just repeated itself. But once I learnt the benefit of soft training, it just opened my eyes to so many different ways of approaching health and fitness lifestyle.
Yeah, I've really liked how you went on this self-discovery journey of, it was all hard. And I think, we were brought up in that era where it was all about go hard or go home. And, if you weren't going hard, you weren't training, were you? And if you weren't, if you didn't, as you said, like typically like your first experience when you're on at the police academy was, just you're vomiting, but you still got to keep going.
That was, and I like that. I thought, this is fair income. I enjoy this. Let's be tough guys. But and it's funny because through martial arts, I got into boxing and different things, and hanging around with tough guys, and they'd be sort of looking at me going, "What are you doing, you weirdo?" Like I was sitting there meditating or doing my qigong. And it's funny now, it's become acceptable. Like you see special forces guys, that they're into their meditation. You see the footballers at the yoga class, and 10, 15 years ago, people would laugh and go, "What are these footballers doing at the yoga class?" But I was fortunate through circumstances, got ahead of the curve, and it really made me understand my body. I would listen to my body, and I would listen. Whereas if I was frustrated and angry, myself would say, "Stuff it, I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to go boxing or something like that." But the people that were guiding me, the people that I was learning under, would say, "Well, hold it, your instinct is to go for a run, but the best thing you could do right now is sit down and meditate." And it's funny with meditation, people think it's as simple as I can grab someone off the street, put them in a room and say, "Okay, we're going to meditate," and you're going to be able to sit there and feel all zen-like and relax. That's not the case at all. It's like preparing for a marathon. You've got to do the training. You've got to little steps. And like meditation didn't come easy to me. I'd be sitting in the class, and my mind would be wandering, and I'd be getting angry and getting agitated, sitting in an uncomfortable position. And the sifu would be saying, just let it go, breathe, and all that. And I'm sitting there going, you have no idea how sore my knees or whatever. But gradually you learnt that you could do that. And just with the simple process of breathing, that was a lot of the type of training I did, breathing. And that's very current now. People are understanding the benefits of just, inhaling, exhaling, and just getting that rhythm and relaxation. So with all that, I trained under lots of different people and different experiences. And the one thing I had to check myself with Qigong, I got so into it that I would, in the morning, I'd do my training, but I'd also do Qigong. And in the evening, I'd do Qigong. But then when life got busy, I'd be that frustrated. I'd go, but I've got to do my half hour of Qigong and I've got to do my training. And then I'm thinking, this is causing me more stress than it's meant to. This is meant to relax me. But it became, I lost the purpose of what Qigong was all about, and meditation, and that was to relax and just create a calmness and that. So now I use Qigong and meditation when I need it, and I've got the benefit of having done it for 25 years. And I'll come home if I'm had a busy day or a stressful day, and I know that I just need to readjust, and I can readjust. I use it as a tool, actually. I use it as a tool just to readjust my thinking, readjust how I'm looking at things, and just calm the body down. So it's a great tool. I see it as a thing that I've got in my back pocket when I need it. And relaying that to the work-life balance during the real stressful times, that's the type of thing that I could do to bounce back, because I could be going, I can't take this anymore. Like I'm delving into too much going on. My head's spinning. I'm out of step. You come home, or just socially, it's very hard to come home when you've been operating as making a decision, bang, 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 and then you come home and your partner or your family, you're sitting around talking, and they're talking about mundane things, and you're thinking, I can't get interested in this. That's not their fault. That's my fault. And I learnt that, I would, if I came home with that attitude, I'd just take myself aside, put myself in a room, do some meditation, and come out, and all of a sudden I'm looking at life a little bit differently.
It's fantastic, all that insight you've shared with us. I'm just thinking of all the key points that you've raised. And, certainly one of the highlights of what you just spoke about was really looking within and listening. And that's, Qigong really helped you with that. Meditation really helped you with that. And as you said, the science is really emerging about the benefits, and it's starting to become more profound, or, more widely spread in terms of its use. You mentioned that thing of connecting with your body, your instinct was driving you for this hard training session. But when you look within, you're thinking, I don't really have the energy for this hard training session. And this is where your mentors and everyone guided you to say, go with your intuition, do that softer training session. It's going to benefit you. And I think this self-discovery session of working out when to do a hard session, when to do a soft session, and going with that has really brought out this optimal productivity that, and this ways to bounce back, as you mentioned, in terms of resilience. Because when you're down, you may need, a hard that hard session may just shock it, shock the system and knock out, I guess, change that state that you're in. Or you might be so down that you just need to do that more softer meditation to rejuvenate. And there's some science that's come out. I don't know if you've heard about this heart rate variability, but these devices you can get, such as the Aura Ring, and these ways in which, they're essentially measuring your heart rate, and what it's telling you is your readiness, based on, I guess, how your body is responding to outside stimulus. And so when you're super stressed, your body's very constantly in terms of a high state of, I guess that heightened response. So you're not breathing deeply. Your heart's racing. And it's very consistent, and there's not much variability. You can't really respond well to the environment. But when you're really ready, your body responds to the stimulus from the environment quite immediately, because it goes from like it's not stuck in that stress state. It can easily move to the relaxed or the stress state based on the need.
Yeah.
And I really thought, what you've self-discovered is sort of coming out in that science side of things.
It is self-discovery, and it's interesting watching the journey, because before, when I was doing it, people going, "Oh, it's all hippie dipshit stuff. What's he talking about?" That, and now, as you just raised, it's the science behind it. And I've done meditation retreats in Nepal, and sat there with sound healing, a bowl on my head and the sound vibration and all that. And it's amazing. One retreat I went to, I don't think I'd ever been so relaxed in all my life. And I'd get up and do my hard training. I'd do my boxing training in the morning, and then sit and meditate and chant and all sorts of things. But if you open your mind up to it, and it really is discovering what your body's capable of and knowing your body. And I think that's a big point. And another, if it's, I don't like to say advice, but just things I've observed, is that I would have friends come up to me and with good intent and say, "You're fit. I want you to get me fit. Let's do this." And they'd start their own fitness program, and they'd be running 5 kilometres a day right from the start. And then they'd be doing weights, and they'd be doing this and be doing that. And I'd watch and go, "Guys, just slow. Moderation. Start off where you're capable." So it might be running for 20 minutes. Just work up a sweat and that, instead of starting this, because I watch them. They last about 6 weeks. They go, "This is great. It's great." And then and they stop. So the other thing that I do is that even if I don't feel like doing training, I call it maintenance. I just maintain a level, so I don't let my fitness drop or my health go down. So it might be a lazy training session, and but I'll just go through the motions. But I do it because I've just ticked it over. And then what I've also found is that if I get myself too fit, and I go through cycles where I'm feeling strong, I'm feeling fit and healthy, but I can't maintain that for a long time. So I then let myself drop down a little bit, and then have something to aim for. Boxing is another thing that I really enjoy, and people can't quite work it out when you say, "Okay, but I like sitting and meditating, but I also like getting in the ring." And sometimes when I'm really stressed, it's amazing. You could think you've got the world's biggest problems, but where you're staring at someone trying to knock your lights out or kick you in the head, standing opposite you, it's amazing how you just let all the other things go. And sometimes I need that. Like sometimes, yeah, I'm going to go into the boxing ring, I'm going to jump in with someone that's better than me, and I'm going to get towed up, but it's going to help me just forget what my issues were or concerns were. So that's another thing that's very good. I know, and just on a personal thing, I had a couple of charity fights in the last year or so, and for Police Legacy, and preparing for the boxing there. I was going through some stressful times at that point in time, but it was and I wasn't doing the soft training then. I had to get myself fight ready, so I was really doing some hard training. But that helped me also. But then after I finished that, then I would, okay, I've just held it together to get into the ring and do what I wanted to do. And now I've got to heal my body with the injuries that I've been carrying, because you had to get yourself, a fight fit type thing. One thing, and I don't listen to my own advice, is I should stretch more. I did a lot of Bikram yoga. That's the hot yoga, which doesn't sort of, from my point of view, doesn't feel the philosophical side of yoga. Like there's different types of yoga, but I definitely saw the benefit with stretching in a hot environment, and I sweat so much it's embarrassing. And I've trained in some gyms, and people wanted to do studies on me how I sweat, but I've found out, and the research is that it's quite efficient. Like I can sweat very easily. I start running or just do one round and I'm sweating, but that's the body's way of cooling itself down. And another thing, and these are all the things that work for me. I've got I lived in an apartment that had a steam room, and for 8 years, and I'd have a steam session after most trainings in a pool, to have it hot and then dive into a cold pool. I moved out of that place, but I've now got my own electronic sauna, and after most training sessions, I'll spend half an hour in the sauna, and then cold shower or a cold swim afterwards, and that makes me feel good too, and that helps the little aches and pains you get in your body as you get older.
It's all fantastic tips. There was one that I wanted to touch on from earlier, and it was that one of letting go. So, you've mentioned, there's a persona out there that Gary Jubelin's the tough guy. He locks up really bad guys. He can fight in the boxing ring. He's a hardcore guy. But
Yeah.
certainly, what I've seen is the other side of Gary Jubelin. And I think all men have this persona, or this mask that we carry through society, and it hasn't served men mentally well, in a sense that we try to hold this persona for as long as we can, but deep down there is a softer side of us, and we're not prepared to show that. But you've obviously gone on this journey, and you've copped flack from colleagues, and he's going off to do this soft meditation, and he's not as tough as what he shows or whatever. But is there any psyche or any approach or attitude that you took towards showing the true Gary Jubelin, in terms of revealing your true self and being comfortable with that? Is there anything you could share with men?
Yeah,
Because
I think the persona of tough guys comes from fear. A lot of times where people are presenting, you don't mess with me, I'm going to muck you up. But I think that's it's almost a shield. And what I've found with martial arts and boxing, that I've been towed up by some really small, scrawny looking people that can just beat the crap out of me. So I realised, there's a little bit more to this this toughness side of it. And some of the toughest guys that I know, and they might be on the wrong side of the law, they might be police officers, or all sorts of things, special forces guys. They're comfortable with showing their emotions because they don't have to pretend. I know that if shit goes down, I can look after myself. So I don't feel threatened or challenged. If someone has a go at me, I can walk away from it. And you hear this said a lot, like people say, why are you training juvenile delinquents in boxing, all that? Because it just makes them more dangerous. But what I've seen over the years, watching people that come through gyms and martial arts dojos, that it takes that need to present as a tough guy away, and they find a peace and calmness from the fact that I know I can look after myself, but I don't have to show it every day. And so I think that's the journey I've been on, and yin and yang. And I'm surprised we've got so far into this, and I haven't talked about that, because if someone had to ask me a philosophy of life, not a religion, but a philosophy, it's yin and yang, and that you can have your hard training, but you need your soft training. And in the soft training, there's some hardness, and in the hard training, there's some softness. All that. Like you watch a boxer, a good skilled boxer, how relaxed they are, and it's not this, I'm gonna do this. That might hold you. Yeah, you might beat someone, but you'd probably beat that person anyway because you're physically stronger or aggressive. But you watch a good boxer or a martial artist. There's a calmness about them. There's a looseness about them, and they're skilled. They know that they don't have to fight everything that way. It can be more of a peaceful way, and using your brain. And I spent some time over in Perth, and I didn't know a lot of people there. My ex-wife lived over there, so I spent some time living over there. And you go to a new city, and it's hard to meet people when you're not working and that. But I sort of traded on my physicality and went to a boxing gym and got some friendships there. And there was some really tough. They were professional boxers, and there were some really tough guys there. But I could sit down and have a genuine conversation about their emotions, about how they're feeling, and all that. And that really impressed me. And when I was over there, I also trained in martial arts, Choi Lee Foot, because I was doing some training over here in Chinatown, and the lineage passed over there. I am by no means the best martial artist, but it was good because I was training in a school with the majority of them were Chinese and younger than me. and we used to spar, and I'd come home just completely beat up by, you know, a little guy that could kick me in the head and slap me around. I'd come home and just patch up all my injuries. But it was great for me. It was great for me. I enjoyed it, and it's something that tells you not to take yourself too seriously. And there was times when I'd be training under a sifu and I'd be really stressed. And the further I got up in the police, I'm making decisions. So I'm the decision maker. I'm going, you do this, you do that. So I'm bossing people around. And I'd turn up at the gym and he'd say, what do you want to do? And I say, you just tell me what to do. And I liked being that. I liked taking that step away instead of being the leader, being a follower. And that nourished me too, because I think sometimes, and you see this with people, they get, and I think they bring it home to their home life as well. I'm the boss at work. I'm going to be the boss at home. What I found, and again, that balance, I love being the subservient person. I'm naturally, I think I'm opinionated. People might say other things, but I do tend to lead in environments. But what I find really refreshing is when I know I'm that far out of my depth, I just want to follow, and that recharges me as well.
Yeah, so you're willing to show that vulnerability that, I'm not Mr. Know-it-all, or, I'm not 100% Mr. Tough Guy in all situations. You're prepared to, as you said, be that servant, as opposed to
Yeah,
having to be that constant feel that you need to lead everything. And that really goes to show that you're prepared to show that vulnerability, that I haven't got all the answers. I need a team. I need, I need a partner. I need someone else to fill in this area that either I don't have the competence in, and hence you got the synergistic outcome between, yourself and them, because you're working as a team. And I was just wanting to just touch on, you've led teams, large teams of detectives, and solved major crime cases, and you can't do that as a solo leader, or it actually requires everyone putting in and doing their best, and working together for a common outcome. So I'm really keen to get some of your leadership tips on, because there's certainly listeners here that are in a career and in leadership positions. So really keen to hear your thoughts on leadership.
I think it's a really interesting subject, and the health and the physical side of it plays a part in that too, because you've got to be comfortable. I think the worst leaders are ones that don't listen to people. Yeah, you've got to listen to people, and it is a team environment. People, I think, are shocked when they meet me, because there's a persona, that this arrogance, this confidence that comes across. My public life when I was in the police, or what the public identified with me, I had to be on song. I couldn't show weakness. When I'm going after a crook, you're not going to see weakness on me. My kids used to joke, "We've never seen you smile on TV or whatever." But I'm not going to smile when I'm talking about, I'm coming after you, you killer, or whatever. I had game face on. So people thought there was this arrogance, and with arrogance is this confident that I know everything, that I know what I'm doing. I needed to rely on people, and this is quite an interesting aspect, because people often ask me, how did I cope with all the stress associated with it? You could diminish that stress greatly if you shared it with your team, and in that, we're all in this together. So I've worked with some good teams, I've worked with some bad teams, but when I'm working with a good team, nothing was too big for me. As in, for me, if I was sitting there as the boss, I had to make the final decision. I had input from all these people that I respected, and finding that. I think as a boss too, it's important in running a team to acknowledge you don't know the answers. And I'd have briefings, and I used to get ridiculed by people within my own organisation, because the amount of briefings I'd have, and people would, I'd make comments behind the back. He just likes to hear his own voice, blah blah blah. They miss the point entirely. A briefing was, you bring all the skill set in of people there, and have junior police. And I joke sometimes at briefings, you'd go around the room. I might be coordinating the briefing, but you'd go around the room and you'd be asking questions. It might be some obscure person sitting down the back of the room, the most junior police officer, and say, "Hey, boss, have you considered blah, blah, blah?" And it might be the best idea. And the beauty of team harmony then, if you acknowledge that as their idea, they then become invested in it, because sometimes people, there's lazy cops, surprise, surprise. The way I would try to get the most out of them is make them feel like they're part of the team and they're contributing. And I learned from some great leaders, and I was really fortunate. And one, because I worked so closely with, was Paul Jacob, and he was sort of taught me the ropes in homicide investigation. But he was very inclusive, the way that he included everyone in the team, so everyone felt important. He knew people's names, that type of thing. I think that's important. That's all the positive side of teams. I've been caught out a couple of times on this. If someone's motivated to disrupt the team, the impact that they can have, it surprises me. And I've had teams that have been disrupted by people that I've got no respect for whatsoever. But their sole motivation, why I'm focused on, or the rest of the team is focused on solving the job, was just to cause dissent and disharmony. And it occurred, and I won't name the strike force, but it occurred about 10 years ago, and I made a promise to myself, or longer, made a promise to myself, if ever I see that type of disloyalty and disharmony, I'm going to, they say one rotten apple can spoil the crate or whatever, I'm going to cut that person out and not going to have that. I've made a mistake down the track where I sort of turn a blind eye to someone that I don't quite trust, and I should have addressed it. What's happened with me with the police, and it's funny because people think, oh, well, it's all happened because he's just so aggressive and he's gone at this, gone at that. People said, have I learnt anything from it? This might come as a surprise, but what I've learned, if I had it over again, I'd go harder. I would, where I'm giving someone the benefit of the doubt, I wouldn't give them the benefit of the doubt. I'd say, you're not part of this team, you're not contributing, go, and suffer the consequences there. But there's a place for empathy. And I did an article for a book on leadership, a chapter in a book about leadership. And the thing that I stressed the most was empathy is important as a leader. That your career is just as important as the most junior person in there. Like, everyone's trying to make a life for themselves. And so if you've got empathy, I think that's a good trait to have in leadership. And that's what I try to bring to leadership. But it is a complicated thing. And I learnt on every job that I ran. And homicide was interesting because it's almost like leadership on steroids, because it's you're making some big decisions and they can blow up in your face. And so it's an interesting area to learn leadership. And I think that's what you see in the military forces. Like, there's no more important leadership than if you're leading someone in a war zone or whatever. So that's where I think, there are some good leaders. And I've been fortunate to work under some good leaders, and I take a little piece from them and try to adopt it in my environment.
Oh, fantastic tips. I've learned so much just listening to you, and in particularly how you mentioned, you had this huge amount of stress, or you felt it, in terms of solving this crime, but you'd share it with the team, and you treated everyone as equal in terms of equal input. You listened, you had that openness about you. So, you came to the team. I don't have all the answers. I rely on you guys. You're just as important as me in this team to solving this crime. And it brought out the best in them. And the fact that, you had empathy for team members. And then, you touched on that point that, there's people within teams that are self-motivated, self-interest, and not thinking in the best interest of the team. And they're always best to remove from the team. And, you see that throughout life, don't you?
And I was surprised how much damage they could do. And maybe it's my ignorance or arrogance, whatever you want to call it. But I'm thinking, this person is such a person that's disruptive, not interested. How could he wreck a cohesive team? But they're capable of doing it. And, it's disappointing. I think with teamwork too, it's, taking that stress away by sharing it. Then it's important that they share the stress of taking the stress away by sharing the hard decisions. It's important that the team get to celebrate the successes. And the way that I led teams, and this is what I learned, because basically there's a filtering system. By the time you get to homicide, you should be having highly motivated people in that command. Yeah, they've worked their way up, and so we were given a lot of freedom when I was a young homicide detective, because people, yeah, the boss wasn't sort of bundying on and bundying off, knowing that we're putting time in. But that works if you've got highly motivated people. If you've got people that have got yeah, other motivations on what they want to achieve at work, you can come unstuck with that. You put trust in people, and sometimes they can let that trust down. But it's fascinating leadership. I do find it interesting. I would, taking it back to fitness as well. Some of the teams I work with that I had the best rapport going with, that we'd all train together, and they would come in, and I'd go, bring your training gear in tomorrow, and they go, can we train? I go, yeah, because if we're on the job and we're out for 24 hours, I want to know that you're fit. Or if we're coming up against someone where it might get physical, I want to know that you're capable and you can look after yourself. So I've got no problems with your training. Some people really embrace that, and that created a good harmony. And it also breaks down the barrier between the roles that you've got in the place. Like, yeah, the senior constable can come in and bash the inspector. If you were boxing, and we do some boxing and stuff like that. But that built good team harmony, and you can really see the character of a person if they're being pushed physically, and that's very evident, that you can see the type of person that person is if they're up against it physically. And so I enjoyed that aspect of it too, and I really tried to encourage anyone in the police that if they wanted to train when we're on duty, I've got no problems with that. They've got to be ready to respond if need be. But that I did a short stint in the tactical policing, and I couldn't believe how good that was. It was you had to be ready, and this was with the tactical operations unit, ready to respond if an incident happened. So you had to have your weapons in the car ready to go. But they would encourage. It was almost part of the job. Go down and train. And I'm thinking, this is good. You're getting paid to train. So.
I think it's great that you've taken that into the workplace, that attitude of making sure your workers are healthy, that they're able to. Well, it's also, you've introduced a form of team bonding, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
you do, through that training together, see that other people, another side of them. I spoke about the vulnerability. You get to see that, this chief inspector, he may be up the top of the pecking order, but I can match him in the boxing ring, or I can,
Yeah.
and so it creates that self-belief and self-confidence that I have abilities that they don't have, and it also vice versa. It's showing that it's humbling the other person, thinking, well, I took this guy for granted. I didn't think he'd be so great in the ring, and he's really showing me up. And you've mentioned that a number of times, of taking on smaller fighters, but you've respected their ability, and it's made you better, hasn't it?
It makes you better, and I think you get to that point where, and you talked about tough guys showing emotion and all that. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying, and I would show emotion with the victims when I'm dealing with the victims. And there'd be other cops sort of standing back going, yeah, and I'd be genuine. Like, it's not a big impost on anyone to give someone that's lost a loved one a cuddle. It's just showing genuine human kindness. I'd never make the mistake, like, we're not social workers, like, we're there to, and if you ask the victims' families what they want from a detective, they want a hard-ass homicide detective, find out who killed their loved one. Nothing more, nothing less. That's what they want. But it means so much when they can see that you are genuinely invested and have that genuine emotional connection to the families and understand their suffering. And one of the things that I would say to the junior police, if I was lecturing or talking to them, treat victims the way you'd want your family treated. And when you're talking at homicide, you're talking probably the worst experience someone's going to have in their life, where their loved one has been murdered. And treat them the way that you would want to treat your own family treated. I always, if I'm dealing with families, here's my phone number, call me anytime. And that came back to bite me time and time again. It'd be on a Sunday afternoon or late at night or whatever. But I couldn't look at myself in the mirror if I didn't offer that out to the families. Like, I'm the person that's meant to be solving who's murdered their loved one, well, they've got to have access to me. So that was just a small price to pay, and I think it was the right thing to do.
Oh, absolutely. And there's that old saying that people don't care how much you know or your ability until they understand how much you care. For
Yeah,
that, for that. Yeah.
that's a good, very good saying.
And I
Very good
think
saying.
that's certainly something that you've displayed throughout your career in terms of that empathy, that care, that humbleness. It's incredible, Gary, and you've shared so much insight. Really, it's really been profound for me. A great learning experience. Is
Oh,
there any? You've achieved so many feats throughout your career, and I know you're so humble you won't acknowledge that. But
yeah.
for an outsider like myself, it's incredibly, you've done incredible things. Is there anything that stands out the most to you throughout your career, or maybe it's something that's been the biggest learning experience? You did mention one in terms of not that trust for everyone and equally, and then you're thinking, I don't know whether I should have trusted that guy so much because he really let me down or let the team down. Is there anything that really stands out if you reflect back on your career?
A couple of things that I learnt a lot from the Barraville investigation. That was 3 Aboriginal kids that were murdered in the early 90s in township of Barraville by a serial killer, and I got brought into that 5 years after the murders to head up the reinvestigation. There was a lot of racism involved in the initial part, and still to this day that they weren't given the proper resources. But I've been working with those families for 25 years, and still in touch with them on a virtual weekly basis, even since I've left the police. They taught me so much. They taught me a lot about racism. They taught me a lot about acceptance of within the community, there were people that were failing at different things, but they loved their family for who they were, so that they weren't judgmental. And I learned so much from the families in that regards. The other thing that I've learnt in my career is the way people deal with adversity. And I find the inspiration. People say I've given a lot to the victims, but I've found the inspiration from the victims, the way that they've conducted themselves with dignity. Whereas, the saying, "Oh, if that happened to my child, I'd do this or that." People are more dignified than that when it really, really happens. And I've learnt so much from them. So I just feel thankful. You talk about my successes and that. I'm a little bit confused about the whole situation. Like, basically, all I did was a cop, and I worked the way that I think you should as a policeman. And my circumstance, I've been overwhelmed by the support, and it's humbling, and it's almost like I feel like imposter syndrome. Like, people are saying, I've done good with this, and I feel that I've only done what anyone would do in the circumstances that I was presented with the investigations I've led. So I've got no regrets about the way I've conducted myself. I could take an easier path in life, and I say this to people too. And if we're talking life philosophies and that, I see a lot of people that look at life and think, "Oh, I'll take the easy path." And the ones that take the easy path tend to be the ones that become jealous. And I think jealousy is a real curse, where I like to share. If there's someone I care for, I share that their success is more important to me than my own success. And I really don't like the jealousy gene that comes out in certain people. And invariably, if they looked at themselves, we've all got choices to make in life, and sometimes they've made the choices that haven't worked for them, and then they become bitter and twisted. And I don't want to be bitter and twisted. And I say that I've got over what the police have done to me, and I half joke and say, "Oh no, it's the best thing that's happened to me." And then the other side of me thinking, "Stuff that, blah blah blah." But I'm just getting on with life. I'm enjoying life, and I've got passion for life. And I think if you lose your passion, I don't. I feel that I stay. I try to maintain my physical health, so I can maintain my mental health. And one thing that's just reminded me with martial arts, I was confused about. It was such a philosophical. One of the styles I was doing was very philosophical, but it was also very physical. And I asked the Sifu, "What's that about?" And he made the point that stuck with me, that you look at people that don't train and just they're walking around like this, they're hunched over, they're just they're not healthy. You can tell the way they carry themselves. That physical way that they present themselves impacts on their mental outlook, and that sort of made me think about it. And I think, yeah, if I'm really stressed and I'm just really down, I'm just looking at things in a narrow view. But when I'm feeling healthy and I'm feeling energetic, my mental side of things, I'm looking at the world or looking at things on a bigger scope. And I think that's an interesting connection between mental health and physical well-being, and that's why physical training, I think, is so helpful for mental health. Because I don't know about you, but I know if I've done a good session where I know I've really put in and the endorphins have kicked in and all that, it's hard to be depressed, isn't it? Like you're feeling good about yourself. You think, yeah, I'm on my game at the moment. So if people are suffering from mental health, and if you can experience that and get out there and just do something that invigorates you, challenges you, and all that, and I think that can change your outlook on life.
More great words of wisdom, Gary. I really appreciate.
I wish I could listen to my own advice sometimes, but yeah, I think it's always a work in progress, isn't it?
Well, and you've touched on so many key points. You've spoken about work in progress, starting small. You've spoken about leading by example, getting in there with the team, showing that you're in there working with them towards a common outcome. It's just so many gems, and like for me, the whole podcast has been a real highlight and a great learning experience for myself in terms of what you've shared. So it's magic. And I'm thinking that the listeners, you've probably certainly aroused them in a positive sense in terms of their outlook and how to look at leadership, how to look at their mental and physical health. How can they, you've got some books out there, you've got your podcast that's running, I Catch Killers, same as the autobiography as I Catch Killers. How else can people follow you and I guess get more words of wisdom from Gary?
Look, I think with the podcast and the book was, it was confronting writing it, but it was also cathartic in that, this is the way that I look at things. But with the podcasts, what I'm getting from the podcast, and I'm sure you're experiencing the same things, when you sit down, you've got to actually have a conversation with people, that it's amazing what you can take away from that, and you're getting insights and that. So getting more of me. I'm not sure. I get sick of myself. I hear myself on the radio all that so many times. I turn it off. But look, the podcast, the book, all that. I'm out there, and I've got to accept that's part of what I do now for a living. Is I'm out in the public, and I'm trying to embrace this with the same passion I have with policing. And the other thing is you've got to enjoy yourself too. And I sort of laugh at the way my life has turned out now, like an author. I wish I paid more attention in high school when I was doing English, things like that. Doing a podcast. I'm still caught up in my mind. I'm just still a cop battling along, trying to do their best. So I'm embracing what the world's offered up to me, but. If the parting word of thoughts on life, you get out of it what you put into it. And I've got results. The things that I've enjoyed the most are the things that I've had to work hardest for. If anything comes too easy to you, it devalues it. When you've got to put the effort in and you get the reward, that's where it sort of makes me feel good and makes me feel like it's all worthwhile.
Absolutely. And I loved how you touched on those words that, Steve Jobs also resonated with, was follow your heart, and you'll look back and then you'll see the connections, but just follow wherever your heart takes you, follow your passions. That way it'll bring out the best in you, and you'll put the work in, won't you? If you're doing something you're passionate about, just like you have in everything you've pursued. So, I love those concluding words, Gary. And I just want to thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure the listeners are really grateful to have you share all your life lessons, your words on physical and mental health. And listeners, if you liked the episode, please like and share it with others so that we can get more of these great life lessons that Gary's imparted. with others, and so that they can grow as a human and become better humans, so that we have a better society. So stay tuned for more insightful episodes of Me and My Health Up. Thank you.
Thank you.